Hi, in this video we'll look at harder inverse functions. So just as a recap, whenever we have this kind of question, your first step is to replace the f of x with a y, just to make it look a bit nicer, and then we want to change the subject. We want to rearrange this until it's x equals something. So again, the first step I suggest, we've got a minus 2x, that can make things a bit awkward, so we're going to add it to the left hand side to make it plus 2x. So we've now got 2x plus y equals 10. Next, the opposite of plus y is minus y. So 2x will equal 10 minus y. And the opposite of times in x by 2 is going to be dividing by 2. Then that's our inverse function. So I say the inverse function is going to be this, but we replace the y with an x. Okay, we're looking at the harder questions today. That is where x appears twice. Typically it appears at the top and the bottom of the fraction. That's what you should normally see. So let's go through the same idea. Conceptually it's the exact same idea, we just have a lot more difficulty in changing the subject. So your first step here is we do not like having fractions. Whenever you've got a fraction you want to get rid of it as fast as you can. That's pretty much a golden rule of maths. The opposite of divided by 2x plus 1 is times it by it. And you also must include brackets, because we're timesing y by the whole group 2x minus 1. That includes the 2x and the 1. So your first step is to multiply the bottom part of the fraction. Your next step will be to expand out whatever bracket you're left with. Now, we want to change the subject. We want to make this x equals. The way we do this is like solving an equation. You want all the x's on one side and everything else on the other side. So I want to take this x across. The opposite of plus x is minus x. I'm also going to take this y across as well, and the opposite of minus y is plus y. So basically both these x and y are swap places. Next, I don't want x to appear once here, but currently it appears twice. We can solve that just by simply factorising out x. So factorise out the x, I'm going to be left with 2y minus 1, and that equals y. Now to get x equals, I've got x being times by 2y minus 1. The opposite of timesing by that big group is just dividing by it. And then we're done. Okay, let me zoom out a bit. So those are all the steps we need to do. That's a bit more complicated. Don't forget your last step, which will be to say my inverse function is just this thing here, but again you don't write it as y's, you write it as x's. Okay, I'm going to go through a few examples of that where not too much changes, just an idea of how it works. So first step is always the same. We're going to just write this as a y to make it a bit easier. Next, we get rid of the fraction. We're going to multiply this up by x. So my next line is going to be xy equals 3x plus 1. Now to solve this, we want all the x's on one side and everything else on the other side. So I'm going to bring this 3x across, and it'll become minus 3x. Again, opposite of plus 3x is minus 3x. Next, we only want x to appear once. We do that here by factorising it. So it's going to be x brackets y minus 3 equals 1. Lastly, the opposite of timesing by this stuff is dividing by this stuff. So x will just be 1 over y minus 3. Then we're done. So my inverse function will just be this, 1 over x minus 3. Okay, zoom out just to give you a look at all the steps there. So your first step is always the same. Get rid of the fractions, get all the x's on one side, and then factorise the x's out and divide through. Okay, let's keep going. Eventually it will get easier the more practice you have at it. So first step, we replace the f of x with a y. Next, we do not like having a fraction here. So the opposite of dividing by this stuff is going to be to times by it. Whenever we times by a group, we have to put it in brackets. Next step is going to be to expand out that bracket. So we've now got 2y minus xy. And that equals 4x. We then want to get all my x's on one side. For this question, it's going to be slightly easier if I get all my x's on the right hand side. I'm going to keep them all as positive. Again, you get the same answer both ways. It's just slightly easier to always work in positives when you can. We now have x appearing twice, but we can fix that by factorising it out. And then our last step, the opposite of timesing by this bunch of stuff, will be dividing by it. If we divide by 4 plus y, we're then going to be left with x by itself. And then we're done. This here is my inverse function. So f to the minus 1 of x is going to be 2x over 4 plus x. Again, zooming out to give you a look at all those steps there. Okay, again, not the easiest skill. I'm just going to go through 2 more examples. So here we want to find f to the minus 1 of 5. That means you want to invert the function as normal and then plug 5 into it. So we've basically got 2 steps here. First, let's invert the function. That's the same as what we've done before. We replace f of x with y, and we then change the subject. So first we multiply up by 3x, so we'll have 3xy. We then want all our x's on one side, so here the opposite of minus x is going to be plus x. Now we only want x to appear once, so we need to factorise it out. So x brackets 3y plus 1 equals 6. And then the opposite of timesing by this big bracket will be dividing by it. Again, hopefully those steps appear a bit more normal by now. And then we're done. We now have our inverse function, which is 6 over 3x plus 1. However, the question said we wanted f to the minus 1 of 5. So we can do that. All we need to do to work this out is replace all my x's with 5's. So 3 times 5 is 15, and 15 plus 1 is 16. And that's our answer. And again, we simplify it down to 3/8 if we need to. Just going to finish by going through like a more exam style question. So here we've got 2 functions, f and g. Part A is this we call back from the first video on this, work out fg of 4. So we work out g of 4 first. That's going to be 3 take away 2 lots of 4. That's 3 take away 8, which is minus 5. We now need to work out f of minus 5. That will be 4 times minus 5 plus 1. 4 times minus 5 is 20. Add on the 1 gives us minus 19. So 4 times minus 5 is minus 20. Okay, next we've got a slightly harder question. Given that h is fg of x, find the inverse function of h. So we need to work out h first. H is fg of x. To work this out, we plug in g of x first, and we do f of that. So we're going to do f of 3 minus 2x, because that's what g of x equals. Plugging it into here, everywhere we see x, we're now going to write 3 minus 2x, again keeping that in brackets. So 4 brackets 3 minus 2x plus 1, and then we can clean that up. So 4 times 3 is 12, plus the 1 is 13, and we've got 4 times minus 2x will be minus 8x. So that is my function h of x. In this question, we want h to the minus 1 of x. So to do that, what we've just been doing, we're going to change the subject. So replace h of x with a y. I'm just going to rearrange. This one's quite nice, there's no fractions involved. I'll take the 8x across, so 8x plus y equals 13. Opposite of plus y is minus y, and then we can just divide 3 by 8. So 13 minus y all over 8. And that's my inverse function. H to the minus 1 of x, remember you have to replace this y with an x, so 13 minus x all over 8. Lastly, it wants h to the minus 1 of minus 2. So again, there's a lot of steps here, but none of those steps are too bad by themselves. Okay, you stay calm and try and work out each step one at a time. So let's do this. H of minus 2, we just replace that x with a minus 2. So it's going to be 13 take away minus 2 all over 8. 2 minuses make a plus, so that gives us 15 over 8. Okay, and that's pretty much as hard as I can throw it at you. You might see the same type of question with like a fraction for one of these, but hopefully it wasn't too bad for you. Thanks for listening, and I hope that was helpful.